The Zari Academy was feared across 100 star systems, a place where young officers were taught the brutal truth of power, and today the air inside its stone halls felt heavier than ever as students from dozens of species marched toward the training floor, their armor polished, their bodies tense, their hearts pounding fast beneath the cold lights. They all knew what this lesson meant. They had heard the rumors whispered in night barracks, stories of a creature dragged from the edge of the void, a living nightmare called the Beast of Shadows, the Empire's most powerful fear weapon. Even the instructors walked with stiff shoulders, pretending to be calm while their eyes kept drifting toward the reinforced doors at the far end of the arena, the ones built with metal so thick not even a battleship cannon could dent it. The viewing deck above was filled with silent generals, their faces carved from stone, watching with the same confidence as hunters who believed the cage would always hold, believing fear was still their easiest tool, their favorite weapon. The doors slid open with a deep grinding roar, chains dragged across the floor like metal snakes, and the temperature dropped so suddenly every student felt their breath catch in their chest. From the dark came two glowing eyes, then a low growl that shook the walls, then the massive shape of the beast stepped forward, its claws carving lines into the reinforced ground, its breath rising like smoke from a fire that refused to die. Some students backed away without meaning to, some trembled so hard their armor rattled, others tried to stay still but their fear gave them away, bodies shaking under armor plates. The arena filled with panic, with raw instinct, with the sound of young warriors learning how small they truly were. But one figure didn't move. One figure didn't flinch. A lone human stood at the center of the formation, calm, steady, eyes locked on the monster as if staring into an old storm he already knew how to survive. For a heartbeat the beast froze, its chains tightening, its muscles rising like mountains ready to strike, the generals above leaning forward, waiting to see the human break like all the others before. Instead, something impossible happened. Something that ripped the silence apart and stole every breath from the room as the great shadowed creature lowered its massive head, bowed to the ground, and trembled at the human's feet, like a weapon remembering the first hand that ever commanded it. And in that stunned moment, every student felt the same cold realization rise inside them, the same question burning in their minds. What kind of species makes a monster kneel? The arena stayed frozen in stunned silence, every breath hanging in the cold air as the beast remained bowed with its massive head pressed to the floor, chains loose around its shoulders as if even metal now feared to touch it. The students stared with wide, trembling eyes, unsure if they were witnessing a miracle or a warning, unsure if they should run or kneel themselves. Above them, the generals leaned forward at once, their once calm faces cracking with confusion, their confidence slipping as they realized the weapon they controlled was showing loyalty to someone they never expected. The instructors exchanged nervous glances, their hands hovering near emergency restraints, unsure if breaking this moment would save them or destroy the last sense of control they had left. The human didn't move at first, his breath slow and steady as if he were listening to something deep inside the silence, something only the beast could hear. The creature's body trembled like a storm trying to calm itself, its claws pulled inward, its growl fading into a low, rumbling sound that felt almost protective. The other students stepped back further, fear shifting into something new, something sharper than terror, respect mixed with disbelief, the kind of feeling that rises when a truth too big to understand begins to settle into the heart. The human finally lifted a hand, slow and open, not commanding, just present, and the beast leaned forward as if drawn by a memory older than the empire that claimed to own it. On the viewing deck, alarms flashed red, silent but urgent, warning the officers that the beast's emotional patterns were shifting, that the creature was choosing instead of obeying, and nothing in their decades of training prepared them for that. The High General slammed his fist on the console, ordering the guards to activate the restraints, but the system flickered in response, metal shutters trembling as if the beast's presence alone disrupted the technology meant to contain it. Panic moved through the officers like a spreading flame as they watched the human step closer, the creature lowering even further, massive frame folding into a gesture that didn't belong to a weapon, but to a guardian. Whispers rose across the arena, voices cracking with fear and awe, students asking the same question the generals did not dare speak. How did the beast know him, and why did it submit? Before anyone could move, before the guards could approach, the beast suddenly lifted its head toward the upper deck, eyes blazing with a warning that shook the glass, a warning aimed not at the students, but at the Empire itself. And in that single breath, every officer realized something terrifying. Their greatest weapon had chosen a side, and it was not theirs. The beast's warning shook the arena like a living thunderclap, the armored windows trembling under the force of its roar, the lights flickering as if even electricity wanted to step back from whatever ancient power had just awakened. Students fell silent in rows, their fear swallowed by something deeper, something that felt like witnessing a truth buried under centuries of lies. On the viewing deck, Officers scrambled for control, their hands flying across consoles, voices cracking through comms. But every command returned the same chilling message: override denied, system interference detected. No one wanted to say it aloud, but the tension in their eyes made it clear. The beast was overriding the arena itself. Down on the training floor, the human stood calm in the center of chaos, as if the roar didn't shake his bones, as if he had been waiting for this moment all his life. His heartbeat was steady, his face focused, his posture relaxed in a way that didn't fit fear or shock, but something more complicated. Something like recognition. The beast shifted closer, its massive shadow wrapping around him like a shield, its breathing deepening with a strange certainty, its eyes locked on the officers above with a gaze that felt almost protective. The other students watched with trembling confusion, because the creature wasn't bowing now, it was guarding, positioning itself between him and every threat in the room. The High General slammed open a command channel, his voice sharp with panic, demanding to know why a single human cadet could trigger every alarm the Empire tried to bury. But before anyone could respond, a new sound broke through the arena. An old, broken chime echoing from the beast's collar, a sound none of the officers had ever heard before. The device wasn't flashing red like a weapon out of control. It was glowing blue, soft and steady, the color of unlocking, of recognition, of returning. One of the science officers staggered back from her console as the readings came in, her hands shaking as she whispered what the data showed, a truth that drained every shred of color from the generals' faces. The beast wasn't reacting to danger. It was reacting to a command code embedded in its memory, a code linked to one species, a code the Empire never knew existed. Her voice cracked as she read the final line aloud. The beast is responding to original handler signature detected. Genetic match, human. Before the generals could shout, before anyone could process the meaning, the beast raised its head toward the ceiling and unleashed a roar that shattered the remaining glass, a roar that didn't sound like fear or rage, but like something long enslaved finally waking. And every soldier in the arena understood the same horrifying truth. Humanity wasn't just familiar to the beast. Humanity had commanded it before. The roar that shattered the viewing glass poured through the academy like a storm breaking open the sky, the sound rolling across metal floors and echoing through distant halls, carrying a message no one wanted to understand. Officers shielded their faces as shards rained down, students ducked beneath their arms, but the beast didn't move from its place. It stayed rooted beside the human, its massive frame blocking the falling debris as if instinct alone demanded it protect him first. Smoke drifted from broken wires, sparks danced along the floor, and alarms screamed across the arena in wild panic. Yet through all the chaos, the human stood frozen in a different kind of silence. Not fear, but something deeper, something that felt like a memory calling from a place he couldn't reach. The generals tried to regain control, shouting orders through damaged comms, their voices cracking with a fear they didn't know how to hide anymore. They had built an empire on power, on discipline, on weapons that never questioned commands, and suddenly the truth was staring back at them. One human cadet held more authority over their greatest weapon than the entire council combined. The High General's hands shook as he pointed at the human and screamed for the guards to seize him, his voice rising with desperation, as if capturing the boy might erase the truth they had uncovered. But no guard moved, not one, because between them and the target stood a creature that could level cities, and its eyes burned with a promise no soldier wanted to test. The human finally breathed out slowly, a sound soft enough to be drowned by alarms, yet the beast responded instantly, lowering its head again, waiting, listening, as if a single exhale carried meaning. His chest tightened with confusion, the weight of a responsibility he never asked for pressing into him, his mind racing through memories that didn't exist, trying to understand why this monster treated him like a leader it had lost. The students watched with trembling awe, their fear now twisted with a strange hope, because for the first time, the beast didn't look like a weapon. It looked like something searching for a home it had been torn from. Then the power flickered again, every light in the arena blinking off for a heartbeat, and when they surged back on, a hologram flickered to life above the beast's collar, unstable and half-broken, showing the shadow of a human face, older, weary, commanding, recorded long before the Empire ever found the creature. Officers gasped, students stumbled back, and the human cadet stared upward as the hologram's distorted voice whispered a single word that felt like it reached straight into his bones. Return! The beast lifted its head sharply, chains clattering, eyes glowing brighter than before. And in that instant, everyone understood the same terrifying truth. This wasn't a mistake. This was a summons. And the beast had just answered it. The hologram flickered above the beast like a ghost pulled out of time, the blurred human face trembling in the broken light, its single word still echoing through the arena like a command spoken across centuries. Return! That one sound hollowed the room, pulling every gaze toward the human cadet as if he alone carried the answer. The officers stared down with shaking hands, the students held their breath, and even the alarm seemed quieter now, as though the entire academy was listening for what came next. The beast stepped forward slowly, each movement deliberate, heavy, almost ceremonial, its chains dragging behind it like pieces of a past it was finally ready to confront. The human's heart hammered in his chest, not from fear of the monster beside him, but from the weight of a truth too big to understand, a truth that made his skin prickle and his breath come shallow. His mind flashed with fragments he didn't recognize. Shadows, light, a feeling of standing somewhere cold with a massive creature waiting at his side, like two warriors preparing for a war no one else remembered. He didn't know those memories, yet they felt carved into him, like old scars he had never seen but somehow carried everywhere. When the beast lowered itself again, waiting, listening, the cadet felt his voice rise unsteady in his throat, as if something deep within him was trying to speak through him. The High General, desperate and terrified, finally snapped. Shut down that hologram, shut down everything, restrain the beast, restrain the human, now! His voice cracked with panic, not command, and for the first time, the rank around his shoulders looked weak. Guards hesitated, torn between orders and the impossible truth unfolding below. The beast's eyes shifted toward the viewing deck, narrowing with a cold, growing fire, the kind of fire that didn't belong to an animal, but to something that understood betrayal. The hologram sputtered again, the ancient voice struggling through static, trying to form another message. If you are seeing this, the war, not over. They took you. They used. The rest dissolved into digital smoke, the face burning away in a shower of blue sparks that vanished against the beast's dark hide. The silence afterward felt heavier than the roar that shattered the glass, almost sacred, almost dangerous. Then, without warning, the academy trembled. Not from the beast, not from fear, but from something far below the floors, a deep vibration rising through the stone like an engine that had been asleep for thousands of years suddenly coming alive. The lights dimmed to red, the ground shook harder, and emergency barriers slammed across the exits with metallic booms. A voice no one had ever heard before rumbled through the academy speakers, ancient and cold. Original handler signature confirmed. Awakening primary command structure. The floor beneath the arena cracked, glowing with lines of blue light that spread like veins across the stone, forming a circle around the human and the beast. And as the ground began to open beneath them, every soldier realized they weren't witnessing a return. They were witnessing a reactivation. The arena floor split open with a deep, ancient groan, blue light rising from the cracks like the breath of something waking after ages of darkness, the glow swallowing the shadows and lifting dust into swirling halos around the human and the beast. Students staggered backward, officers clung to railings, but the light didn't touch them, didn't reach for them. Everything focused on the circle where the beast stood guard and the human stood trembling, caught between fear and destiny. The vibration grew stronger, humming like a buried engine the size of a mountain, and the academy walls shook so violently the banners of the empire tore free and fell like defeated flags to the floor. And in the rising glow, the beast lifted its head and released a low, mournful sound, not a roar this time, but something that echoed of memory and grief. The human felt warmth flood through his chest, a pull he couldn't explain, as if an invisible hand were lifting a curtain inside his mind, revealing the outline of a truth he had spent his whole life walking beside without ever seeing. Images flickered behind his eyes, not clear, not full, but enough to burn, enough to change everything. A battlefield under a red sky. The beast standing at his side, unchained. A fleet behind them, human ships, not myths, not rumors, real, powerful, forged in silence and shadow. And one final image, a message carved into his bones long before he was born. Humanity doesn't run from fear. Humanity teaches fear to kneel. The High General screamed for someone, anyone, to stop what was happening, but his voice drowned beneath the rising pulse of the awakening structure, a machine buried beneath the academy, built by hands no alien empire ever knew existed. The blue light surged upward, forming a pillar that wrapped around the human and the beast, and for a heartbeat everything became still, silent, breathless. The beast lowered itself again, but this time it did not bow in fear or obedience. It bowed in recognition, in loyalty, in something sacred and unbroken. The human stepped forward, unsure, unsteady, but the moment his hand touched the beast's massive head, the entire chamber erupted in white light. When the glow faded, the academy stood still and trembling, the cracked stone cooled, and the awakening voice spoke one last time, softer now, like a whisper from the past. Humanity has returned. The officers fell silent, the students stared with wide, shaking eyes, and the beast rose beside the human with a calm that felt ancient, royal, unstoppable. The Empire's greatest weapon wasn't theirs anymore. It had chosen its true side. And as the dust settled, the human felt something new fill his chest. Not fear, not confusion, but a quiet, rising strength, the kind that belongs to the first spark before a dawn no one can stop. He looked up at the broken academy, at the trembling officers, at the beast waiting beside him, and he understood. This wasn't the end of the lesson. This was the beginning of humanity's return to the stars. The light faded slowly, like a sunrise pulling back into the earth, leaving the arena scarred, quiet, and filled with a silence so heavy it felt like another presence in the room. Dust drifted in soft spirals through the air, settling over shattered glass and fallen banners, while every eye in the academy stayed locked on the human and the beast standing at the center of the glowing circle. The beast's massive frame was calm now, breathing slow, its eyes no longer full of fire but something sharper, something aware, as if the awakening had unlocked more than memory. And the human felt it too, a faint vibration under his feet, a pulse rising through the stone like a heartbeat stretching across time, waiting for him to understand what had been sleeping beneath the Empire's feet. Officers scrambled to regroup on the viewing deck, their voices low and frantic, every command tangled in panic. Their empire, their pride, rested on the idea that humans were weak, scattered, forgotten. But everything in front of them said the opposite, said the lie was breaking. Students clung to each other, whispering questions none of them had answers for, watching the beast and the human like witnesses at the edge of a miracle they never believed could exist. And deep in that growing silence, something colder slid across the room. Recognition, not just from the beast, but from the walls themselves. The floor around the glowing circle hummed again, the blue lines brightening, forming symbols the alien students had never seen before. Sharp, elegant curves that pulsed with a rhythm distinct from any language of the Empire. But the human froze when he saw them. Because even though he had never studied them, never read them, never heard of them, he understood them. His breath caught in his chest as the shapes burned brighter, and for the first time the officers felt fear rise toward them instead of away, fear that came from not being the ones in control anymore. A deep metallic shift echoed under the arena, like gears the size of continents turning for the first time in thousands of years. Walls trembled, lights flickered, and the hum beneath the academy grew louder, stronger, like a signal finally reaching the surface after being buried alive. The beast lifted its head sharply, its ears twitching, its muscles ready, waiting for something only it could sense. Then the symbols lit in unison, and the stone floor projected a massive hologram into the air, a map of the galaxy spinning slowly above them. Not the Empire's map. Not the Council's. A map marked with faint, pulsing human signals. Dozens of them. Scattered across systems the Empire believed were empty. The officers gasped, the students staggered back, and the human's heart stopped as the largest signal flared bright. Not far from the academy, not dead, not forgotten. A hidden human fleet. Waking up. The holographic galaxy spun slowly above the shattered arena, its blue light washing over broken glass and trembling students, the soft hum of the projection strangely gentle compared to the chaos that had come before. Dozens of human signals pulsed across the map like distant heartbeats, faint but steady, each one a reminder that history had been rewritten, stolen, buried under an empire built on fear. The officers stared up with hollow eyes, their power slipping through their fingers as they tried to understand how so many signals could exist without their empire ever detecting them. Their silence wasn't strategic now. It was the silence of people realizing the universe was much bigger, much older, and far more dangerous than they ever believed. The beast shifted beside the human, lowering its massive head as if listening to something the others couldn't hear, its eyes glowing in a soft, haunting rhythm that matched the signals pulsing in the hologram. The human felt the sound too, not in his ears, but somewhere deeper, somewhere behind the ribs, like a voice calling from the spaces between stars. He didn't fully understand the connection yet, but the pull was unmistakable. Those signals weren't just coordinates, they were memories waiting to be awakened, threads of a story older than any alien empire, threads tied directly to him. The revelation didn't bring triumph. It brought a weight that settled over his shoulders like a cloak he wasn't ready to wear. The students watched him with wide eyes, the fear inside them shifting shape, no longer terror of the beast, but the heavy awe of standing next to someone who unknowingly carried an entire legacy on his spine. Some stepped closer, drawn by instinct, sensing that the human was no longer just a cadet, no longer just another recruit lost in the Empire's machine. The instructors whispered to one another, their voices low, unsure if they were supposed to protect him, fear him, or kneel like the beast had. No one dared move toward the hologram, because the lines of light felt sacred now, untouchable, vibrating with a quiet warning. The human reached toward the glowing galaxy, his hand hovering inches from the brightest signal, and for a moment everything in the academy went still, even the alarms seemed to hold their breath. His fingertips brushed the light, soft, warm, like the echo of a fire long extinguished but still smoldering beneath the ash. The entire map rippled, a wave of blue light rolling outward, making students gasp and officers stumble back. The beast stepped closer, muscles tensing, sensing what was coming before any of them could see it. Then, in the quiet that followed, a single signal swelled brighter than all the others, expanding, pulsing, as if something enormous had just opened its eyes far beyond the stars. A low, resonant tone filled the arena, ancient and steady. Not danger, not threat, a call. And the human's breath caught as he understood. The signals weren't just waking up. They were answering. The tone rippled through the academy like a shockwave, low and ancient, vibrating through stone, metal, and bone until every living creature felt it settle deep inside their chest. Lights flickered wildly overhead, consoles sparked, and the holographic galaxy trembled as the brightest human signal expanded again. No longer a point on a map but a growing sphere of light, pulsing like a star preparing to ignite. Officers stumbled backward in pure terror, shouting for evacuation, shouting for lockdown, shouting anything that might make the rising dread inside them slow down. But nothing slowed. Nothing stopped. The entire academy felt like it was standing on the edge of something enormous, something unstoppable, something older than every law, weapon, and chain the Empire had ever built. The beast roared, not in anger, not in fear, but in fierce recognition, as if the call in the hologram was a voice it had been waiting a lifetime to hear again. Its muscles tensed, claws digging into the stone, eyes blazing with a fire that almost looked joyful. Students screamed and scattered as cracks raced across the floor, blue light streaming upward in violent bursts, the entire foundation of the academy shaking like a mountain waking beneath them. The human staggered forward, bracing himself on the beast's massive shoulder, the vibration inside him rising until it felt like his own heartbeat was syncing with the distant signals calling across the stars. Then the roof groaned above them, heavy, metallic, tearing under pressure. Dust fell like ash. A deep external alarm, one the Empire reserved only for extinction-level threats, began to howl through every corridor. Officers raced to the shattered windows and froze, their faces draining of color as they saw the sky outside. The clouds were splitting apart in perfect circles, giant rings of light spreading outward like ripples from a stone dropped into water. Only these ripples were miles wide, bending the sky itself. A fleet was coming. Not the Empire's. Not the Council's. Something else. The brightest signal surged once more, and the hologram of the galaxy dissolved into a single expanding symbol. An emblem none of the aliens recognized, but the beast dropped instantly to one knee. A human emblem. Lines sharp as blades. Wings spread like a rising dawn. A circle behind it, glowing like a sun. The human cadet stared at it, breath shaking, because he knew, without ever being taught, that he had seen that emblem before. Outside, the sky tore open. A massive shadow descended through the clouds, silent, immense, ancient. A human warship. The kind the galaxy believed had died out thousands of years ago. Its engines lit the academy in blinding light as it broke through the last layer of cloud. And then every comm panel, every speaker, every piece of technology in the academy activated at once. A voice, calm and powerful, filled the air. Human signature detected. Initiating retrieval. The warship's weapons began to charge. And the academy trembled as if the judgment of an entire forgotten civilization was falling upon it. The warship descended like a silent storm, its vast shadow swallowing the academy, its silver hull glowing with ancient markings older than any alien empire. Wind roared through the shattered roof as engines hummed with power that felt almost holy, a sound that made even the strongest officers fall to their knees. Students clung to pillars, shielding their faces as the ship lowered closer, its presence not hostile, but absolute. The beast stepped forward with a steady, reverent grace, positioning itself protectively between the human and the trembling remains of the empire that had once claimed to rule everything. And in that moment, the academy, once the heart of fear, felt like a place waiting for judgment. A beam of soft blue light broke open from the ship's underside, widening slowly until it formed a path from the arena floor to the open sky. Dust lifted from the ground, rising gently into the air as if weight no longer had meaning. The whole academy bathed in a breathless quiet. The human cadet felt the pull immediately, warm, familiar, like hands he had never known calling him home. His throat tightened, his eyes stung, not from fear, but from the strange ache of belonging, an ache he had carried all his life without understanding why. The beast nudged him gently, lowering its massive head until it rested against his shoulder, a gesture filled with a tenderness no one expected from a creature built of claws and terror. Officers tried to speak, warnings, orders, desperate lies, but their voices broke apart in the wind, meaningless now, powerless against the truth rising into the sky. Students watched him with wide eyes, not in fear, but in awe, sensing that they were witnessing the rebirth of something the universe had tried to bury under centuries of silence. The human stepped forward, each step slow, uncertain, emotional, until he entered the beam and felt its warmth wrap around him like a memory returning to life. The beast followed without hesitation, its form dissolving into light beside him, its chains falling to the floor with a soft, final clatter. The warship's voice spoke once more, calm and steady, as if it had waited 1,000 years for this moment. "Welcome back, Commander." Tears stung his eyes, because the title felt like something he had never heard, yet always known. The beam lifted him upward, the academy shrinking beneath him, the Empire's lies crumbling into dust as the ship embraced him with open air and ancient light. Students watched in stunned silence, officers trembling at the edge of ruin, and high above, the forgotten warship opened its doors with a slow, graceful bloom, like sunrise over a sleeping world. The humans stepped inside. The doors closed, and as the warship turned toward the stars, engines flaring with a dawn-bright blaze, a quiet truth settled over every soul who witnessed it. Some legacies never die. They only wait for the right heart to remember them.